Oh no, Kelly's going away because something came to her door or something.
Oh, I hope it's a really cool delivery.
No,
no, it's a ghost. It's definitely a ghost. Kelly.
Did a ghost come into your house?
It just started raining really hard.
Okay.
Okay. Hello and welcome to Because Language, a show about linguistics, the science of language. I'm Daniel Midgley. Let's meet the team. Hedvig, I'm going to borrow one of your questions because I saw that you were tweeting about this, so I want to use it. We have Hedvig Hurgard. Hedvig?
Yes?
Favorite kind of rock?
Ooh, yes. So because, I think Ben, I'm a fan of N.K. Jemisin, I've been getting more into kinds of rocks. Mm-hmm. So I think obsidian.
Ooh.
Obsidian's really cool.
A strong entry.
Any particular size?
Size? What do you mean?
Does it have to be monolithic size or just the size of a small pocket knife?
I'm not sure obsidian comes in monolith size.
I reckon it must, right? Like
I didn't know that.
If it's
volcanic.
Yeah. Like surely certain lava flows have made
I don't know. I don't care about size.
Some of those volcanoes are pretty big. It's 1 minute in and we've already seen the word plinth. Also, Ben has not waited for me to introduce him, but that's all right.
That's in keeping with every other episode we've ever had.
Yeah, I choose obsidian. Thank you for asking. I would like to know everyone else's. What's your favorite one, Daniel? What's your favorite rock or precious stone?
Yacht.
Yacht?
What is this?
Yacht.
What is yacht?
You mean...
Yacht rock.
You mean
no,
like...
Daniel, no.
I don't really
Stop it.
much mind what kind of rock it is as long as it's a pretty rock. I just like pretty rocks.
Name a pretty rock.
No.
Name a pretty rock. At least give us that.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that mica is very pretty. Okay. It comes in little flinty layers and you can peel them off, and I had fun finding mica in my hometown and flaking off the layers.
And it can be extracted by child labor and put into cosmetic products, which is a thing.
Oh,
yay.
Shiny.
Flaky layers.
Okay, let's introduce Ben now. Ben Ainsley is coming on next, and he's going to tell us his favorite rock.
Well, when I was little, we did...
Am I still here?
Yeah.
No. You are irrelevant. I don't know if anyone else did this, but there was like... You know how like yo-yos and hula hoops and stuff? So rock tumbling was like a fad that happened when I was a little, like maybe when I was like 10 or 11, and people would get like rock tumblers off like phone order catalogs. And so I was living in a place in WA called Kalbarri at the time, and it actually has some really interesting geology up there. And my favorite was always Tiger Eye, both for the name and because of how cool it looks. Tiger Eye just has a very, very pleasing sort of eye feel as far as a rock goes.
And you could find them up there?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I learned something interesting about tiger eye last week. I think it was a colleague at the Institute who told me that if you put a tiger eye stone at the end of a string and you have a question, yes or no, and you hold up the string and you see if it spins one way or the other, it'll tell you what the decision should be.
Ah, the idiomotor effect.
Yeah, it's a scry stone.
Just to be clear, this is a colleague at the Max Planck Institute, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's moderately concerning.
We both understand that this isn't real. We both understand that it can be helpful. Okay.
So what does it do for you? What does it give you, this mutual belief that you know to be wrong?
Well, the idea is that you already know what the decision is. Like, you already know.
Yes.
And then also, if the stone goes the opposite way, your sense of disappointment will tell you...
Yeah, right, okay.
what you should have done.
It's like a geological The Dice Man kind of setup.
Yeah,
right, okay.
But she said it had to be Tiger Eye.
Why not?
Naturally.
Mm.
Well, thank you both for being here. Our special guest for this episode, she's a postdoctoral research fellow at Virginia Tech, where she does experimental sociolinguistics, lexicography, and she advocates for linguistic justice. It's Dr. Kelly Wright.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
What is Kelly's favorite rock?
Okay.
Yes.
I have a lot of favorite rocks. I've been learning a lot about geology during the pandemic, actually. I'll have to say right now, it's probably olivine, which is on the surface of the earth. It's the gemstone peridot. That's my best friend's birthstone. And it can be a lot of different colors, but it's mostly what the upper mantle is made out of. And so if you were to travel to the center of the earth, it would be primarily green, which is fantastic.
That's dope.
And that's why olivine is like something I'm a little obsessed with right now.
Wow. Okay.
I Google image searched it and I can tell you it's really pretty. And if you sort of
And I like it.
I'm not sure, I didn't know how to spell it, but it is spelled exactly like it sounds, like olivine. Like,
Also, based on my Google image search, peridot is also a really cool one of the gems from Steven Universe. She's got like a real cool vibe to her. So I'm on board with that as well.
Yeah, my best friend also has a very cool vibe.
oh yeah. Oh, is this one of the evil characters?
I don't think so. Certainly not based on the images that I'm seeing.
Okay. Anyway,
So-
super cool.
Kelly, you were with us on our white supremacy episode a long while ago, and we were looking for a chance to have you back because lately you've been at the convergence of a lot of things we are intensely curious about.
Yeah, I'm super happy to be here. I have been doing a lot of things. I wear many hats in this world, and only a few of them are joy filled.
Oh no.
And the rest of them have you on the struggle pile. That's a phrase that you used when we were on Twitter exchanging messages talking about, well, what is this going to be about? And the phrase struggle pile came up. And why did that come up?
It's just, because of the work that I do really intersects with oppression, intersects with like just dealing with a lot of people's pain. And then working with a lot of different organizations, who maybe aren't, thrilled to be engaging with that pain or oppression. It puts me on the struggle pile, pretty continuously.
Do you have a thing that you do to make yourself personally feel better?
What an excellent question. I have a fantastic therapist who I see weekly. We have developed an ongoing relationship. If I didn't have that, right, and great friends and a good network, I wouldn't be able to do the work that I do. And I tell people about it. I tell people about how taxing it is. Like when students, especially younger students, reach out and they're like, I'm so interested in doing what you do. And I'm like, cool. It's hard and not for reasons that have anything to do with academic achievement.
Yeah. Ugh. But cool. But I'm glad you have a way of coping.
I mean, I'm working on developing those means. It's, a lot of people get pushed out of the academy for a lot of reasons. And, it's difficult. Wow, we're getting like so dark so fast.
Okay.
I'm doing great. Y'all, I'm doing so great.
Every time.
It's okay.
Existential
It's okay.
ennui within like 4 minutes.
No, but it's an important question. It's something that, does really matter to talk about.
Yeah. Just the emotional labor that's involved is one thing that I think impresses me, but also worries me because you can give too much of yourself in ways that you shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
I imagine that makes up a pretty substantial inner conversation. So, words. Kelly, when you hang out with other people who sit at the sort of intersections that you sit at and who are also of an activist bent, I imagine that sort of occupies a lot of those conversations between like members of that tribe, right? Where you basically all go to each other and be like, so how do you stop from completely flaming out?
Yeah, it is. I mean, this is what I mean about having like a good support network. There's like just these groups of people that, I've been around since the beginning. And a lot of them like are people of color who are going through this, and not all of them are necessarily in the advocacy space, but they are at least working in bodies or with topics that haven't been represented in my field. And so it's good to just be able to talk to folks and be like, hey, how do I get over this particular hump? Or, how do you manage like these competing, conflicts or demands on your time, or set boundaries in this space? A lot of times when we all actually end up getting together, and this is something I have been talking to students about too, of like, supportive networks don't manifest themselves. So, creating space for that really does matter. When we end up getting together, though, it ends up being for like reasons, so it's actually really hard to find the time pulling people together from multiple continents at different times to say, can we just talk about our feelings today instead of the work we have to do? So it becomes difficult. It has become difficult. But we do it when we can.
Well, we're going to talk about how all of the things that you do blend together into an amazing tapestry. But first, our latest episode was a bonus episode for our patrons. We talked to Dr. Isabel Burke about her work on the discourse pragmatic marker.
Yeah, nah.
Yeah, nah.
Do you say it? Have you ever wondered what it does and why? Why particularly those two words, yeah and no? You put them together and you get so many things. Why? Dr. Burke knows, and she tells us. Also, Izzy helped us answer lots of mailbag questions. So if you want to hear that, and you're not a patron, just join up at the listener level. That's patreon.com/becauselangpod. Oh, also, we're getting our yearly mail out together. Every patron, no matter what level, gets something. So make sure that Patreon has your correct address. Make sure you update it. Take a second, stop the recording, go and update your address so that we'll get that to you. A big thank you to all of our patrons.
Shall we find out what's been going on in the world?
Yes.
The world. Let's restrict it to linguistics. I think we're all, after this week, have enough of the rest of the world.
I want like a proper shotgun spread of every conceivable topic.
You don't.
No.
Well, we've got a few, but let's see what we got. First one's about baby talk. Baby talk. Something I'm very into. So my young one, 5 years and 11 months, said something really interesting. She said,
not a baby,
but child language acquisition. Okay. She said, my sister doesn't like Vegemite and so do I, which...
Oh, interesting.
We get little windows, don't we? So it's been wondered, how do children learn language so seemingly fast? I think it might be kind of slow, but we've talked about our homebrew theory, and that is that children get all their needs met and they have very few responsibilities, so they really have little else to do but go around and gather language data from other humans.
Just bumble into mistakes over and over and have insanely patient people be like, no, sweetie, that's yes and, or whatever.
Or even just like, I've invented my own word for this and now my mom says the same word as well.
That's right.
Like actually not getting corrected and just like forcing yourself on your environment. Yeah.
Radical accommodation.
Yeah.
The Schlegelhardt. Yes, of course, sweetie.
Yeah.
Children have incredibly patient interlocutors, except for my kids, who they get a patient dad every once in a while. But another idea as to how children acquire language is that people talk in a simplified way to children. This kind of language is sometimes called child-directed speech. Child-directed input, I feel like speech is just for spoken languages. I would like to call it child-directed input. Anyway.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's louder, it's slower, it's got lots of nouns, it's got an exaggerated intonational contour, the words are simple, it uses reduplication, blah, 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 blah. And the idea is that this child-directed language provides a simplified introduction to language so that they can grab onto something, start acquiring chunks of language, and start strapping them together. But the problem there is that every human learns a language regardless of what language it actually is. So the question arises, is child-directed language similar across different languages of the world?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Good so far?
Yeah, I'm following along. My inclination would be to say yes, like the simplification, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. This is work from Christopher Cox and a team from the University of York and Aarhus University. They looked at a few different languages and took a look at 5 different features.
Mm-hmm.
Emphasis on a few.
Yeah, there were a few. Here are some features that they were looking at. Fundamental frequency is it high pitch, low pitch across different languages.
Okay.
Variability in intonation, like the ups and the downs. Vowel space area, do people use exaggerated vowels? Articulation rate, do they really talk slower across a lot of different languages? And vowel duration, once again, exaggerated vowels. And they found that across many languages, the pitch and the speed of delivery, they start out slow with kids, and then adults ramp it up to adult speed pretty quickly in a child's life. But the high-pitched intonation and the exaggerated vowels keep on going for quite a while longer into early life. And the different languages seem to show this kind of pattern.
How interesting.
This is where I say also that this is a meta-analysis of several different papers, and they had 38 languages. And I am pleased to report that not all of them were Indo-European.
Yay!
Only 95%
disproportionate part of them. Like, if we take all the languages in the world, then no, but I mean, so they did.
We'll take what we can get.
So Australian English is in there, Canadian English, Danish, Dutch, British English, French, Scottish English. So there's several Englishes. German, Italian, Jamaican Creole, which probably lexified from Indo-European. 10 I'm up to, and then New Zealand English. So so we're getting US English.
We have lots of different languages.
36
Polish,
Western languages.
Russian, Spanish, Swedish. So that's 17 out of 38. So 17 divided by 38 is 40. So 44% of the sample was Indo-European. And what was it? Did I count 6 Englishes?
They're all industrialized nations. And also these studies were done decades ago already. So it's who's funding it? What's the point?
Yeah, there's some language names here that I've never seen before, like Nyanga Tom. I'm going to see what that is.
Something they randomly picked off Glottolog.
Southern Ethiopia. Yeah, so some of them might be a bit more unusual. But yeah, I mean, they did a meta-study of the studies that exist.
Right. Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So the studies that exist are like this. That tells us something about what exists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in 1982, Eleanor Ox told us that children in Samoa learn in a very, very different way, shockingly, because their society is structured incredibly differently, and people orient to children very, very differently there. And she was like, look, in anglicized cultures, how many Englishes did we just mention? In anglicized cultures, they follow a regularized pattern. 35 years later, these scientists got funded to say, anglicized cultures follow a regularized pattern. Cool. Amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Don't care. I'm sorry. I don't care.
I think there's a way to frame this that is it's a piece of information. Maybe we already knew it. I'm also glad I know a bit of Samoan, and I've been to Samoa, and I like Samoan, and I've read Eleanor Ox and other people, but I'm usually the one to bring up Samoa, and I'm so excited that someone else does the same. It's really nice.
I can put my burden down.
Yeah, and Alessandra Durante and stuff. Yeah. Super cool. There is the potential. So I have a theory. We have a bunch of homebrewed theories on this podcast, and I wanted to know Kelly's opinion about one I have, which is that, for example, in Samoa, adults don't speak to children much at all.
Right.
And children's main social input is other children, maybe some older children than them, peers, and also younger. And there is a possibility that the input they get from other children is similarly simplified compared to adult language. So maybe when parents speak a certain way to their children, they're actually sort of imitating how teenagers speak to their younger siblings. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So mean, really, really mean.
Well, it's actually interesting because that Samoan paper, there's a lot more scolding. But it is in this process of learning ritual, right? So if they do interact with an adult, it's like the oldest person in their culture, who is drilling them on the proper ways of acting in their culture.
So like the sort of the main sensei at the dojo, if we were to make a comparison, right? Like a person whose job it is explicitly to like, you will learn the good things the right way.
And so it's actually interesting that you went there because like, yeah, teens are mean, but it's less of this like coddling, correcting, going with whatever you say, the baby of like being like, let me just adopt your language, kind of.
Yeah.
And let me soften mine and change my pitch and get a whole new register. Let me pick up a whole new register for you. It's like, there's actually not a register for you. You really aren't a member of society until you participate in these ways.
Yeah. But maybe like the way that children learn better. I'm just thinking like, I wonder if someone, teenage children or like preteen children would also, if they were included in this study. So these 38 languages, they find similar patterns in how adults speak to children. That does not mean that it's a global pattern for all human languages. And it could also be possible that the way we speak to children now is not the way we spoke to children like 100 years ago. There's a lot of like things about modern child rearing that are quite new concepts, I think.
Well, let's move on to our next story. This one was suggested by Diego, and it's about Taiwan. We know that China's been putting some pressure on Taiwan's space. It's becoming a warmer topic. And so Taiwan is putting out some English language TV broadcasting in English. They say, internationally, our voice has not been fully heard. China continually disseminates that Taiwan is part of China, and lots of people believe that. So, in the future, we'll be using Taiwan's own media to explain to the international community why that's not so.
Bring on the tea drama, I say.
Yeah.
Is this like Russia Today and Al Jazeera English, and I think TV5 Monde in France does some English broadcasts as well.
I feel like I would like to flag the play there, and putting Russia Today alongside Le Monde and Al Jazeera English is not fair. One is state media and the other is not.
All of them are, but I agree that one of them is worse than the others.
Le Monde isn't state media.
Is it not?
No, it's a public broadcast, but that's different, right?
I mean, sorry, I don't understand. Like in most European countries, you have like a state-funded news
State-funded
network.
is one thing, but
US doesn't for some reason, and it's wild to any European.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
no, it doesn't.
It does. Yes, it does. It has the PBS.
Which has advertisement in it.
Okay, it's a hybrid model, admittedly. But
PBS has advertisements?
Yeah.
What?
They've done what SBS did maybe 30 years ago. But
it's been a while.
And I need to make this point very clearly. Russia Today, yes, is government funded, but it's also government run. And that's not the case in other public broadcasters.
No.
Are we trying to say, please don't use RT, folks, when you're tweeting out news?
Yeah,
please,
no.
Please don't use RT.
Because Al Jazeera English is like fantastic.
Super good.
And I rep them really hard.
Don't you get your news from Deutsche Welle, Hedwig?
Yeah. So Deutsche Welle is also state-funded. There are most European countries that have state-funded
public
media.
broadcasters is not unusual.
No, and some of them have more or less, like for example, in Sweden, there's a debate right now about the heating up conflict situation in the world and whether or not the government can tell the publicly funded media to do certain things.
Wow, they talk about that?
National security interest.
You get to have conversations like sorry, not you.
I know.
Yeah,
weird,
no way.
What if the government is like, everyone has to go inside their bunkers now? Like who gets to say that and how and like.
That's really interesting because I was always, and we are like, we're digressing, but I was always under the impression that governments reserved the right to just blanket co-opt all broadcasts in those
but what are the
situations.
limits of that? What are the limits of that?
Yeah, okay.
If a columnist on the TV wants to say, I feel really worried and I'm personally going into my bunker, and the state is like, we don't want people to panic, can they tell that columnist to not say that?
Interesting. Well, Britain has a very clear answer. Yes, because they have gag orders and they've been around for a long time.
Right. So we're just having a conversation
really
about
problematic laws.
Where in that gray area our boundaries go.
That's really interesting. Hey, Daniel, what's happening in Taiwan?
Yeah.
I just think it's fascinating how they've guessed rightly that we're more likely to listen to them if they speak English.
Yeah.
So they're doing a bit of a combination in media.
It's a commodity.
It's a way of ally building, and they've decided to do that through language, which they've already got allies in American government, of course. Like
Tepid ones, I would argue, like ones that are not clearly willing to go to the mat in any significant way. But look, I don't want to oversimplify the situation, nor do I want to claim to be even remotely sort of well-informed. Like the Taiwanese question, if that's how we want to frame it, is an immensely complex one. And Taiwanese voices need to make a really significant part of whatever the answer to the Taiwanese question is. And it's not like the Taiwanese are a monolith by any stretch of the imagination. They broke away specifically to be democratic. And so there's a whole bunch of different ideas about what should happen and what like forward progress looks like and all that kind of stuff. I meant what I said before, though. I reckon bring on the T-dramas. Like, not in English, bring them on in language, get some really cool, like attractive, younger generation people like doing cool, dramatic things. K-dramas have like stormed the younger generation. I think Taiwan is sleeping
Filipino
on
dramas
this massive,
as well.
Just...
And don't forget that the rise of K-pop and K-drama has brought in more, for example, English speakers who want to learn Korean. Korean language classes have skyrocketed since BTS, for example.
And also creeps.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone here knows about Ollie London. I think I've told you about him before.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, there are always going to be weird people who fetishize other people. I wonder if the Taiwanese campaign also involves Mandarin news for... There's a lot of Mandarin speakers outside of People's Republic of China. Mm-hmm. For example, in Malaysia and Indonesia and Singapore and Philippines probably as well. Like,
it's a good point.
This English is a choice, but there are other choices as well.
What? I refuse to accept this as a possibility. No.
Daniel, and to your point of like, getting their allies, getting their Western allies to pay attention, like English is the medium of choice. My first work in linguistics is on nationalism in Africa, in the Pan-African movement, and why those movements were conducted in English, why they necessarily had to be conducted in English, because the language itself is a tool of politics and diplomacy and war. And if you're going to become independent on the global stage, wresting that independence from a colonial power, which China absolutely is in this instance, has historically required employing the English language, whether or not English was the English were part of your colonizing body. English needed to be involved in your independence movement. And so seeing Tsai Ing-wen the female president of Taiwan, put energy behind this, I think speaks to the Taiwanese commitment to their self-determination.
One quick thing. Last year we had an episode called The Chinese Languages with two guests, Mei Xinwu and Jingting Ye, and we talked about differences between Cantonese and various languages in Taiwan and Mandarin and stuff. So if you want to know more about that, you can go to that episode.
It's one of our most popular ones.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Statistically, it was one of the peak. Let's see. This story was suggested by Magistra Annie on our Discord, and this one's about recursion. Oh, no, not recursion. Why are we bringing up
recursion? Daniel? Tell us.
Well, recursion is the ability to embed things into other things. So, for example, I can, in English, embed a sentence inside the middle of another sentence. I can say, the monkey saw the man. That's one sentence. The man left. That's another sentence. But I can stick them together. I can embed them so that it now says the man the monkey saw left. And that's recursive because I've got a sentence inside a sentence, and I can do it over and over again. Okay, secretly, no, I can't, because if I try to do it 3 times, it gets weird.
It gets
the man,
cookie.
the monkey, the girl knew saw left. No, that doesn't work.
Oh my God, Germans love that stuff.
I was I was actually going to say, if you're not careful, you just end up accidentally writing infinite jest, I think, if you go too far down that like rabbit hole.
Oh my God.
Use them margins.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why recursion is a hot topic in linguistics is because Chomsky, Hauser, Fitch famously claimed that recursion is, they thought, the defining quality of human language, the thing that separates human language from animal communication. Dan Everett reckoned that Piraha didn't have it, and so that started the whole thing about, is it important or is it not? But this discussion is about some work from Dr. Diana Liao at the University of Tübingen in Germany. They were looking at center embedding, like the example that I just gave, the man the monkey saw left. And they tried it with humans. They previously had tried this test with gibbons, I believe, with primates. They would put up on a computer screen a bunch of brackets. Imagine this, curly brackets, left and right, straight brackets, left and right, all mixed up on a computer screen.
Uh-huh.
And what you have to learn to do is embed them. And if I was embedding them, what I would do is I would say, left hand, I don't know, parenthesis. Left hand curly bracket, right hand curly bracket, right hand parenthesis. So the ones that go together are on the outside, and the ones that go together, the other pair, are on the inside. It's recursive. I have embedded that set of brackets into the other set of brackets. That's the test.
And they actually gave the crows, them visual stimuli of the brackets.
Mm-hmm. And they're
we haven't
tapping
mentioned
them.
crows yet.
We haven't mentioned
But
the crows
yes,
yet.
the
First they
crows
did it with monkeys. First they did it with monkeys and babies. And people, adults.
Yes, it was adults. Gave them verbal feedback if they got it right for humans, and gave them some juice
Some snackies.
if they were the primates.
Little snackies. I wish that we also got snackies. Why couldn't it be balanced? But okay.
I was just
I
thinking
wouldn't
the
mind
same thing.
some juice.
Just give me some apple juice. I'm anyone's.
Little Capri Sun. Okay.
Oh my God, yes.
Continue.
I was brought up in the States. There's no Capri Sun here, and it kills me. It's like I miss my fruit simulacrum fluid.
It's got to be the
so
best
good.
part about having kids is like, ooh, terrible food. Okay.
I'm going to drink the rest of your juice box. Where'd my
It's
juice
gonna
box go?
spill.
What's that thing called? In when I lived in Canada for a little bit, I would always buy, I think it was called Tang,
Oh, dang.
Yep.
which is
Tang.
like not allowed to be called a fruit juice, really.
No,
Made for
it's
No.
It's an orange flavored drink.
Yes.
I think it's a,
It is an orange flavored drink.
I think it's a
It
fungus.
says that on the box.
Yeah.
yes, it's
No,
drink.
I loved
It is
it.
drink.
I lived on Tang dumplings and Reese's peanut butter cup.
Can we get back to the brackets?
Oh, fine.
Okay.
Both the humans and the primates did a pretty good job, although the primates needed more trials when they got off of the list that they were trained on and got into like having to tap a new set of brackets. So pretty good, monkeys, not too bad. Now it's time to start with the crows, and guess what? Crows did pretty good as well. They didn't need the extra training that the monkeys needed. They were clever critters because corvids, no slouches in the intellectual department.
Corvids, good with beaks. Sorry.
They sure are. So the takeaway from this is meant to be that crows can do recursion.
Wow.
Can
They
they
were able
though?
to center embed.
Can they? Is that
Can they?
where we've arrived? Because like I always feel like whenever we do an animal language story, my job is to let you say a bunch of stuff and then basically be like,
Which I did.
and then basically go, righto, linguists, bullshit. Like,
I want to take you to a linguistics conference and they'll present work like this. And now we have a question. First up is Ben. And you say, can they though?
Fucking
Really?
Are you sure?
Like, really?
They need
Like,
that.
fucking
We
really?
need that. Please.
No, but
Please,
really?
Please.
I'm also for that. I have a question. There's a couple of things. First of all, is recursion really what is so cool about human language? I'm not convinced.
Yeah. Okay. So like fundamental flaw number
Please
one.
don't make
Yeah.
don't make the Everett people angry.
Like I'm not sure. I think we do cooler stuff that has to do with like our like social dynamics and like empathy and
whatever,
theory of
hippie.
mind and like being able to like collaborative and like put our needs. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's Chomsky saying that the one unique thing to language is something syntactic, because that's his thing. But as we've said, if you're looking for what's special about language and you're looking in the syntax box, it's possible that you're looking in the wrong box, even though syntax is very cool.
Like a lot of other social species are not as helpful as we are. Like we're insanely helpful to each other. And that's even factoring in that we like make war against each other. So like
Okay.
Like all the murder and stuff, like still, yeah.
Yeah, like still we're insanely helpful.
Murder, yes, and we can have that conversation,
We help
but
them
still.
right up until we kill them.
I do agree.
And then like maybe and then there's the Ben's question, which is like, is this task testing what they say they're testing? I don't know. I'm looking at some of the stimuli here. And it is literally what Daniel described. Like,
Right.
it's a bunch of images with brackets. I'm amazed that, like...
Tap, 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 tap. Well, and some critics are saying, oh, well, they're just learning that those things go on the outside.
Like
and those
a
things go on
pattern
the outside.
recognition thing, right? Like the videos of like babies reading the words on the ground, or like a border collie, like knowing grammar and all that kind of stuff, where it's just like, what turns out, creatures really want food, like a real bad. And they will figure out lots of ways to get food.
Me too.
Okay, but that's what we want to know, if they can figure it out. It looks like they can.
There's a bunch of stuff animals seem to be able to do when humans put like a %, on the other end, but they don't do it naturally themselves to each other, right? So like, is it interesting if they can figure it out, if they're super motivated and there's a human there prodding them, if they never do that behavior, like if there was like some observational study where there was some sort of also, I should maybe stop saying like, this is kind of a cool study. It is kind of neat. Like, I don't want to be too cynical. Also, we might be hiring a crow cognition person later in our department, so I should.
Really?
I don't know, maybe, yeah.
I feel like Headers is just like guarding for like the Kent Brockman thing of just like, and I for one would like to welcome our new Corvid overlords.
Coverlords.
Yeah, sorry, I really missed that obvious one.
I think I'm on the same page with you, Edvig. It's like these however many crows that live in a testing facility certainly certainly remembered this sequence that they were trained on, right? And I am not the person who's going to be like, all of these studies are just training. Like that is something that we hear about all these kinds of studies, right? That they just learned this, which like, that doesn't mean that people can't, or that these creatures or species can't do these operations. But I am on the same page of, we trained like these individuals to do this, or these individuals are showing us that they can. That doesn't necessarily mean that these species do. There are lots and lots of things that humans do that are things that humans don't do, like climb to the top of Mount Everest, right? Like that is a thing that we display those behaviors, but they're not common to the species, right? So it's Valor Tiagra is a scientist like quoted in this who's talking about the study, and he says like, it is, quote, fascinating, a very Spock response, right? And I agree. It is fascinating. But he then goes on to say like, these crows aren't producing anything like human language. And it's like, yeah, man, beaks. Like, I don't, So it's, were we expecting them to like, be like tap, tap, tap brackets and then just jump into a conversation? Like,
yeah.
So.
In fairness to the study, they were good at the training set, but they were also good at a test set of 4 brackets, like 2 pairs.
Right.
And then they said, F it, let's try 3 pairs, see if they can still do it. And they did. They actually did pretty well. So if you think recursion is a big deal in language, then this is interesting. If you think that the important stuff is not necessarily syntactic, if you think that syntax is kind of not the defining, if you're thinking the defining feature of human language is not in that box, then you're not going to be as interested in it.
I always like corvids though. Like we just went on a walk here and we saw some birds
like,
were dropping nuts onto the road to get them smashed by the cars. And I was like,
crows are not on trial here. Crows are wicked. Ravens are awesome. Like they are awesome. My very favorite bird in the world is the magpie.
Australian.
Yeah. The Australian magpie, not that
You're like,
bitch pretender from the continent.
Not that garbage
They're
species.
very different.
And I believe magpies, if not a true corvid, are like pretty corvid adjacent as far as birds go, right? Like they're very smart.
think so.
They've got sharp beaks. They're predators. Blah blah blah. And I adore them.
That's what it
They're
takes.
just wicked. They're just wicked. I love them.
I love any animal where when you look into their eyes, you can like tell that like there's something going on. Like if you look in the eye of a goat and then look into the eye of a sheep.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. I know exactly what you mean. Sheep are vacant.
I had a crow experience. There was a crow hopping up close, trying to get some of my sandwich. I was eating a sandwich on the grass. He wanted some. Hopped over. I just ignored him, looked at him at the corner of my eye, and then I looked sharply at the crow. And he just started picking up leaves, like, oh, I'm just after
Well,
these
nothing to see
leaves.
here.
And I just liked crows after that. I just thought they're cool.
They're very sweet.
Okay, let's go on to this last one by Aristemo on our Discord just quickly. The article is, we've been pronouncing Adele's name wrong. Adele reveals the correct pronunciation of her name. This is a YouTube video by The Independent.
Adele, the British singer.
Thank you. Not some other person called Adele. I thought everybody
Just
knew
this
Adele.
girl. No.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was talking about this girl I grew up with named Adele. I had a huge crush on her. It was massive.
Like
Anyway.
in this world where we're getting more and more segregated, not everyone knows everything I've learned. Like,
Thank you.
Steve's nephew has his guitar lessons. He's like 7, and we found out that he didn't really know who the Beatles was, and he's like from Manchester.
Oh.
Wow.
I feel really bad now for outing him, but he's just a child. He's learning. It's fine. But like,
Do you know what? I'm gonna be profoundly outside my gender and racial expectation. I'm so glad to hear that. I'm so glad to hear that the Beatles is finally leaving the like cultural cash currency kind of thing. That makes me very
he does
happy,
know who
that's right.
Boney M are, though.
I'm going to say it. I like Boney M way more than the Beatles. Way more.
Did you tell him, oh, it's that band with the guy from Wings?
No.
Yes, Daniel. She made an incredibly like bespoke music deep cut reference to the 7-year-old.
Thank you.
I didn't pretend like there was anything wrong with it at all. I don't think we need to.
No.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's fascinating.
No, I get what you mean though. It's surprising. Yeah.
Okay,
fascinating.
Adele.
The singer Adele took a question from a fan who pronounced her name with L vocalization, as in something like, I'll just play the audio here.
Hi Adele, I'm Annie and I'm from London. And my question is, on your journey...
Where's she from? Enfield or something? Love that. She said my name
says
perfectly.
London. Yeah.
He came and asked me how I say my name and I was like, Adele.
How's
and she was
mine?
like, hi, Adele.
They do Adele?
Adele.
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 So like a little kid, like with a W kind of sound in there?
I mean, wow.
No, this is a feature of child language, but it's also a feature of lots of different kinds of English. And Adele, for her part, said, ooh, where was she from?
She said, oh, you must be from X. Like, she knew exactly where she was from.
Yeah, you said my name perfectly. It's Adele. So, this is a phenomenon known as L vocalization. It's, where is this spoken? I know it's incoming in some parts of Australia. Like in South Australia, they sometimes say milk with the W sound, football, word final, or Brazil. Brazil.
I've heard Brazil. I have heard Brazil here.
Well, it's a common feature of African American English.
Yes, it is.
I have trouble hearing the difference between these two sounds because I don't separate them naturally.
Interesting.
Okay.
I could hear the difference for some of them, but not others. Like when you said Brazil, I got very confused because that just sounded... Can you say them the 2 ways? Brazil.
So, but this is with no L vocalization. Brazil. Brazil. And now here's with L vocalization. Brazil. Brazil.
That's very small.
Word final L sounds a lot like W for a whole lot of people.
Yeah, right.
So this isn't necessarily we've been pronouncing Adele's name wrong. It's just that Adele commented on the way that someone said her name and thought it was cool.
Right, so like a variety of English in the same. Is it not unlike the fact that like some West Country people will still say like lamb and comb? Like it's not that one is right and one is wrong. It's just the different varieties of English handle the same word in different ways.
But when it's your name and you're from a place...
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say, right? Like, I guess when it comes to a name, you have, one would imagine, a bit more weight to it than lamb.
Well,
But
like
where is Adele from? Sorry.
To Google.
Tottenham,
Literally,
London.
all of
There
us.
we go.
Where else? Do we know anywhere else? I'm noticing an article from Dialect Blog, The Trouble with L Vocalization, and they mention African American English. They mention Pittsburgh. There's places in Australia. It's thought to be Cockney, but it's not exclusively Cockney. It's just one of those, I don't know, it's just one of those desire paths that people take in the English-speaking world. It's all over the place.
And she does speak a little bit Cockney, doesn't she? When she...
I think a little might be a bit generous. My understanding is that when she's not singing, she sounds like a right gaffer.
Which, I mean, is only a benefit and a plus in British media and probably American as well. People are like, charming, love it, EastEnders, best thing.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, hey, thanks to Aristemo for that one.
Thank you, Aristemo.
Let's move on to the Oxford game, which we like to call Yeah, Nah, or Nah, Yeah. In this game, I give you 2 words, and you have to figure out whether they are related or whether the similarity between them is merely coincidental. The answers will come from our sponsor, the Oxford English Dictionary, the definitive record of the English language.
Game on.
Right. You two are both doing pretty well. You blitzed last week's one. I'm wondering how Kelly's going to do on this one.
Almost certainly better than us. That's
okay.
My guess.
Here we go. Here are the words, and this pair was suggested by our patron Istin on our Discord server. Garlic and garland.
Ooh.
Because, as all of us vampire hunters know, when you're toting your garlic around, the easiest way to keep those cloves at the ready is to string them into a lovely garland shape hanging around your neck. And then when you need them, boom.
I like that.
Boom.
So, what do you reckon? Kelly, you want to go first?
No.
Nope. Hedvig, I'm looking at you.
Oh,
I am loving the confident no just then. That was
I love a confident no.
If I could bottle that and just show it to people, be like, this is what a comfortable boundary looks like, everyone. just calmly established.
I think we found our new GIF for this episode.
No. Okay, I'll take a stab.
Okay.
I think that garlic and garland are different. I think they come from a different root, and my logic is this. From what limited understanding I have about food, my understanding is that Britain, until relatively recently, terrible. If we think boiling everything now is bad, right? Like prior to colonialism and like spices coming in and all that kind of stuff, like neeps and Swedes were the predominant fucking carbs for Brits for like a good several millennia. And if you've ever had a neep or a Swede, you know exactly how sad that is. So I'm thinking garlic was actually, again, relatively speaking, kind of sort of recent. And I reckon garland, as like a ceremonial thing, probably has a slightly older root in English than garlic has. That's my guess.
Okay. Hedvig, your turn. Yeah, no, or no, yeah?
I also think that garlic as a concept in North European cooking is comparatively recent. I don't think it's a new world food. I think it occurs in Asia and maybe around the Mediterranean. I don't think it's something that came over from the Americas. I don't think, but I might be wrong. But in all the languages I know, garlic has very unrelated words. So like English garlic,
really?
Swedish white onion, vitlök, German Knoblauch, which is like nub onion, I think. And in French, I. And then those are the ones I can think of right now. And so that tells me that they're not super old. That said, you guys say Swede for something that everyone else says something else for, and that's super old. So not, but like generally cabbage, onion, and those kind of vegetables are fairly similar. Often English is the odd one out. So I think it's recent, and I know that when you store garlic a long time, you braid them into a thing.
Right. That's what I was thinking.
And I think that's related to the garland. Yeah, and Kelly. Kelly's next.
Kelly, your answer.
Okay, so I wanted to check about it. I do not think they're related. I wanted to check one thing, and that was the root of gar in garlic. I know we're maybe not supposed to check things. I don't know.
Did you check something?
I did. I said I don't think they're related. I checked the root of gar in garlic just to make sure that I was right about this, that it comes from spear.
Okay.
Right. And that's like not a garlic. Like, so this is what I'm thinking. Like, we braid garlic. Maybe that's the same as garland. But I feel like whatever a garland is, this is coming from the like practice of adorning homes for holidays. And that is something that is much newer than whatever we were doing with drying garlic. And so garlic, like the spear part is about the plant, like what the plant itself looks like coming in and out of the ground, right? So I don't think they're related. However, I do think that root maybe comes way, way back from the same place, but I'm not sure of that.
Okay.
I just wanted to know if I was remembering spear correctly. But I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no, they're not related.
Okay, Daniel, put us out of our misery.
Okay, so Ben and Kelly, you think that they are unrelated. Hedvig, you think that they are related. Would it change your mind if I told you that garlic comes from about the year 1000?
No.
Maybe.
Okay. The correct answer, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, they're not related. Yes! So with garlic, the gar is in fact a spear or a javelin, and the leek is a leek.
Like a leek.
And that makes sense because garlics are kind of like leeks a little bit, and gar is the javelin because the clove looks like a spear. So a garlic is a spear leek.
No, not the clove. Surely the leaf.
No, like the top, the little top is like
the bit that comes
the
out.
bulb.
Yeah.
Not the bulb. Not the bulb.
chive
What?
part.
The bulb. The bit that comes out, Daniel.
when it very first comes out of the
spear
ground.
like about a
when
bulb.
it very first comes out of the ground, it looks like a spade, like the top of a spear. That's,
like a chive.
I didn't
when
know
it very
that.
first breaks the ground, that's the spear part. Yeah.
Thank you. I learned about garlic today.
Very different from when leeks come out.
Daniel, I have to ask, have you ever seen either a head of garlic or a spear before?
It looks different. It looks different than when a leek pierces the ground.
I just get all my garlic from a jar in the fridge. Thank you very much.
Oh, jeez Louise.
And I stick it in my porridge, which I make with water.
Ooh.
Now then, garland, on the other hand, for garland, the gar is not a spear, but it's just a part of the word that they used for that thing. And the OED says that it shows up all over the Romance languages. French guirlande, Provençal guirlanda, Italian guirlanda. Interestingly, Spanish guirnalda, metathesis, flipping those sounds. And the OED says no satisfactory origin has yet been suggested for it. So as far as we know, the answer is not related.
Yeah.
So, thanks to the Oxford English Dictionary for supporting this episode of Because Language. If you like hearing the Oxford game, why don't you tell them? And then they might get us to keep doing it. They are at OED on Twitter. You can pester them. You can also, while you're pestering the OED, you can subscribe to the OED. If you don't have access to your organization or your local library, you can subscribe. Just head over to the webpage for this episode, becauselanguage.com. Click the big OED button. That way they'll know it's from us. And that's the Oxford English Dictionary, the definitive record of the English language.
Can I just say as well, thank you to the OED, because being right is good, but beating Hedvig is great.
You gotta risk something
go
to gain
contrary for a
something.
while.
Go big or go home, headers.
Yeah.
That's what I want you to keep thinking so that I can keep winning.
What's that saying? If you're gonna reach the mountain of Slay, you have to go to the valley of Flop.
Oh, mate,
Okay.
get off TikTok.
I knew that would annoy you. I knew that would annoy you. Sorry.
Oh, dear.
We're talking with Dr. Kelly Wright about her work in linguistics, and it touches a lot of different areas. Kelly, where do you want to start? I've noticed that you've been working we just did the Oxford game. You've been working with Oxford in their efforts to document words from African American English. What's going on there, or what has been going on there?
Yeah, a lot. So I am a member of the Oxford English Dictionary Researchers Advisory Guild, which sounds very fancy.
Sounds so D&D. I
That's
love
super Oxford.
It is. It's very Oxford. I love it though. It's actually really cool. It is like an invitation only space, but it's nice because you get to be there and people who work for the dictionary post questions to this area where experts can comment on them. So they say things like, oh, we got this submission and we're not really sure about how to classify it, or we need like some more citations to support this. You know, do you have language consultants, or do you know, communities we might want to go into to support like what one person has submitted, which is really nice. So most of what I am able to comment on as myself as an expert in that space, because a lot of things like come through, right, where they're just saying who can help, which is really nice. They have this varieties of English page, and it is entirely open access, which is really wonderful that the Oxford folks have done this, have made it public facing. Anyone can come to this page and search their own variety of English. So you could look up Hindi English, or, Indian English or Chinese English, these things that can get more fine grained. And if your variety isn't there, you can say, hey, my variety isn't here, so there should be a page for it. You can go to a page and you can upload examples of your own language use. You can do that in any modality. So you could do a video. If you were a signer, you could sign Black, sign language, right? You could sign, or you can just speak it. You can say, this word is used in my language and here's how you pronounce it. And it actually goes back to the earliest traditions of the Oxford English Dictionary, which they crowdsourced all of their material. People would send in lexical items on like slips of paper, and they would go to the dictionary, and that's how they got like their 1, 2, 3 senses of a word, right? The more reportings that they got of a particular usage, that would be the top sense of it, that they had like dated back farthest. So I really love being a part of these more inclusive and open access efforts that the dictionary is being a part of.
Did you get a sense of why they've decided to do this? I mean, I know that we always had this problem in lexicography of trying to Columbus words from African American English or different varieties of English. Was this did you feel like this is a way of doing better, or to redress what they've been doing?
Yeah, I think so. There's a number of different motivating factors for these projects. I think one of them is there is a significant potential that there will never be another print edition of the Oxford English Dictionary. Having several volumes of it sit on a shelf, in the amount of time it would take for it to come out, it would already be out of date. And so I think lexicographers are very aware now, much in ways that they probably weren't 200 and 300 years ago, of how fast language is changing, and how these documentary efforts need to be much more inclusive. And so I think as their efforts move entirely digital out of necessity for just being able to capture the language as it is moving, if for no other reason, right, is that these pages help them to say, what do we need to cover, right? And how do we represent these origins in a more inclusive way? Because the traditional sources that they have reached to, things that have already been published, or varieties of English or other languages, right, or other usages that are covered in print journalism or in the media or scripted media, just don't represent the way that language is being used on the ground, and they just don't represent these word histories accurately. And so I think that there has been a move for, honestly, about 150 years now for the dictionary to be more inclusive of these communities who are innovating on the ground.
That far back, you reckon?
Oh, yes, I do.
It's really important that an institution like the Oxford English Dictionary recognizes their power in this space, because a lot of people don't believe that something exists unless it exists in the OED, which, linguists and other people might not always think is true. But I think if you ask any random English speaker, they would say, oh, that's not a real word. It's not in the OED. So it means that they have a lot of power, whether they want to or not. Like, a lot of people we've met throughout this show that work on dictionaries don't want that power. Like, they're like, no, we don't want this. But, sometimes you have power that you don't want. And to handle that responsibly, it makes sense. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more, if you knew anything more about what you said about sign language, because so Oxford English Dictionary is about English, but like British Sign and American Sign Language and Afro-American Sign Language are not all English.
Indeed. Yeah, I think that the dictionary wanted to be as inclusive as possible. And so they just didn't limit modality restrictions for the ways in which you could upload data. I don't necessarily know that we're saying they're certainly not making the claim that signed languages are Englishes. I know that a lot of signers do not feel that way. I know that a lot of people who study it, like theoretically, do not feel that way. And I don't want to make that claim, but there are certainly users of these languages that feel like they are using a signed version of English, or that some of these styles that they use are signed versions of English as opposed to ASL, as opposed to BSL, as opposed to their home signs.
Word.
Indeed. Especially when they're right. And so we're talking about, I just wanted to, I really brought it up just to mention that the accessibility is there, as opposed to that there's a specific effort to document like English signed varieties that are specifically English.
I also imagine that the OED doesn't, like, you know, I don't know, there's like a lot of Punjabi speakers in the UK and they're not gonna do a Punjabi dictionary. But they might, like you were saying, like there are varieties of signs that, like, as far as I know from some people I know who are working on sign languages, I know that there's like deaf sign languages, and then there are like signed versions of specific languages that people use as a sort of like intermediate thing with certain people.
Or in certain spaces that call for it, like jargons or other professional languages.
Right.
Where there's not anything else except for like a one-to-one transliteration correspondence. Yeah.
And then it could be more like, oh, maybe that is signed English, but like...
Right. And you're very right about like, maybe they're not going to do a Punjabi dictionary. But if they get enough people saying like, I use this word and like, here's where it's from and all this stuff. And like this word in English, like absolutely comes from this other word in my usage and here. And if they get enough people going in and talking about their own usage in this way and like the knowledge they possess from like being members of this speech community, then they might be able to go in and like edit the history of some of these terms and be able to say things like, they're from this, they are a Punjabi term. And then it got like co-opted into these like more standard varieties when it was first documented in 1610, or it was first documented in whatever, because we like, now we have the information from the speech community, which was never written down, or it was never in these like other written sources that they traditionally, you know, point to.
Could you tell us about a word that they came to you with and said, what about this one? I would love to hear a story about a word that you worked on.
So one of them was like typa, with TYPA. What's that? You have some type of blah, 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 right? African American English.
Wow.
You feel some type of way, like he feels some type of way about this. Like how you feel like if, you know, like that kind of thing of like, you feel some type of way about this, of it not being like a shortening or something like gonna, of it, of like having to make an argument for this is lexicalized. You know, like these people had uploaded a lot of information saying this word was lexicalized. And I was like, it is in my experience. Here's a bunch of examples of people using it as a full ass word and like all this other stuff. Yeah.
And it also doesn't mean the same thing as type of, as far as I've heard it. Like if you say like, oh, he felt some type of way, I wouldn't.
Yeah. But there's this idea that like when people say like finna is a shortening, or it's a version, it's like a black version of fixin' to, that's I like negate, like that's like saying like, okay, that means like black language like isn't a variety and like doesn't have its own lexical items. It's like an X version of some other thing, right? And so like to say that its own words aren't words, that they are shortenings of something else, or, you know, like regionalisms of their own right, or racializations in their own right. It's like, no, it's a word. Here's what it means. You know, it's got its own history. we can show that it was borrowed, just like we show that lots of other words are borrowed that have phonological processes applied to them in different languages. Fin is a word. It's been in the dictionary for decades. Like that kind of thing of like, yep, that's why they gave it its own entry and said it had its own history. It's like the same thing with taipa. It's like, yeah, it may mean the same thing, but that doesn't mean it's not a word.
But I was going to ask, like, because I don't speak Afro-American vernacular English. For viewers who are not viewing a video, I am a very, very white girl and I'm not from the US. So whatever I know about Afro-American vernacular English is through like hanging out on the internet and watching shows and speaking to friends, right? It's not my native variety at all. But I had thought that there was a semantic distinction as well, but I don't know the exact boundaries of it.
Oh, that's, I guess, the difference of like, is it a word? Does it mean the same thing versus like, is it always used in the same semantic space? I think are maybe like two different questions. But meaning capital M, little m, maybe different questions. I don't know. In a sense that we would like write a definition for it versus how do people employ this in the world are maybe two different questions.
Oh, that's where like some people I know like to talk about meaning versus use. But like if you say he feels some type of way about it.
That's the thing is like what are we referencing when it comes up? Like
right.
Does the word itself in the sentence function as the same way as like two separate terms in standard American English or white standardized spoken English?
It doesn't feel to me like they are, but
it depends on who's using it, where and when, right? But but like why you would choose to employ that construction is marking something about this person we're talking about. Like they feel some type of way about it is very like they are being critical, they're being overly critical, they're feeling something that negative, stems right? from their positionality in some way. It has something to do with them feeling X about you know,
is it also a thing of like
experiences?
Okay. Is it also a thing of like I, the person speaking, and you, the person I'm saying it to, both know the way he's feeling about it and that it's negative?
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, it depends. Yeah, I think it being employed in like specific contextual, or most often employed in like these specific contextual frames, I think does have this like assumed meaning for it or like knowledge in community of like, I know what you mean when you say that. Yeah. Of like, if you're going to feel some type of way about it, then blah, 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 blah. Like, if you're going to get all up in your feelings, like, that's like another thing of like being all up in your feelings. It's like feeling some type of way and being all up in your feelings are similar. They, there's a Venn diagram there.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
I can sense the enthusiasm that you have for this project. I think it must be tremendously validating. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, it is. It's really nice. And the people, the women, the incredible women I work with at the OD are all very committed. They're very committed to this work. They're all very committed to making it free and getting the word out so that people just know they can like be a part of contributing to these dictionary efforts. That this is, people of color were kept out of official processes of meaning making essentially for the entire history of print. And so I think that the dictionary like recognizes its role in that, at least some of the members of this team, and are like doing what they can to actively correct that. So it's nice to be a part of that work. Yeah, absolutely. That for all of my dictionary work.
Well, yeah, let's move on to the other facet of your dictionary work. You have two areas here. You've been doing lexicographical work on the journal American Speech, published by Duke University Press. Some great people on that one. Ben Zimmer is on that team. Is that kind of the same sort of deal, or are there some differences there?
Well, I'm actively actually like working for them. I have been for 2 years. I write in this quarterly publication as a co-editor. I'm actually the first woman of color and graduate student to join that team in their 81-year history. I'm pretty proud of that. And I'm a graduate student no more, but was when I joined. And I also have the pleasure of like inviting guest authors, which is fun. It's 150 words on a word history. So if people are excited about that, get in touch. But I love it because we dedicate 2 issues a year to covering the American Dialect Society Word of the Year vote. And
that's coming up.
Yeah, the other 2 issues are on a theme. And so I end up learning a lot, especially with these thematic issues. The last one we did was on cybersecurity. And the next one we're doing is on gender and sexuality. So I get to learn a lot of terms. And then the new words then keep me, involved in what lots of communities are doing right now. I get to, get deep into Reddit and TikTok and see what is happening, really live in spaces of usage. So I enjoy it.
No, I'm working.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I've been on TikTok for 9 hours.
But kind of, I wrote like an entry for WAP and it was like, excuse me, I have to watch this music video again. It's my job. Yeah.
But I can also imagine that some of those spaces can become draining depending on like...
Yeah, and there are like some terms where I'm like, can't do that one. Sorry, not going in there. Yeah. Like especially ones that are about like self-harm and like this other stuff where I'm just like, not for me, thanks. But yeah, they can be incredibly draining. But it's also, it's so important because for Among the New Words, we have this charge, which comes, from our founders of documenting terms that are not already covered in other reference works and terms from usage communities that are not well represented in other reference works. 3 is terms that have recently risen to prominence. So calling it Among the New Words is somewhat misleading, especially to our readers who are like, this term isn't new. And it's like, it's newly covered. It's newly documented. And also it's like new, and especially in our thematic issues where it's like, this is on cybersecurity. So we're reaching into a theme. We're trying to be more representative and inclusive on this theme in these terms that are prominent and weren't covered and are from these communities that haven't been documented, right? And so that's what we'll be trying to do in this gender and sexuality issue. It will reach back into time, but in this effort to be more expansive and inclusive.
Totally fair enough. Like, I don't think there's any way you could do it any other way.
And I love it. And we get to do like emojis and stuff. And it's all very multimodal. So if you go into like and they're free. We've worked really hard to get Duke Press to make them free.
Sweet.
And all of the online resources are incredibly multimodal. So you'll see all of the tweets and the videos and the TikToks and everything there that we've referenced instead of just a concordance style sentence thing.
Yeah.
You can thank Charles Carson for that. He works tirelessly.
Gosh. I was thinking about this aspect of your work, and I was thinking, gosh, sociolinguistics to lexicography, those are so different, but they're just not different.
Not at all.
No.
But it's not, like a well-worn pipeline. I don't think a lot of people talk about lexicography as a profession, especially to like our undergrads and master students in the field. It is a job. It's a real job. Global, international profession. And so, and it's, like I said, it is the hat that I wear that gives me the most joy. I love it. It's sustaining work.
Okay. Well, there are other aspects that are a little harder. I was thinking about, I noticed that you were on the LSA social media committee because there had been missteps in the LSA, and we were super duper encouraged to see people we like joining the social media committee. And then I see on the website now, established in 2020, the committee is currently inactive due to changes in the membership of the committee.
Maybe for some of our listeners, we need to do a little bit of a recap.
You mean like the missteps?
A Linguistic Society of America.
Yep.
I'm going to be shit at this recap. I should not be doing it.
No, please.
No, because there was so much back and forth, and some of it started.
Can I tell you what, can I take a stab at it? And Kelly, because you are the very closest to this and probably have the greatest understanding of the four of us, you can tell me exactly how badly I fuck it up. But I'm just pitching this to just like...
Wait, can we check if Kelly wants to talk about this?
Oh, no, we can talk about it.
Cool.
I ran away a little while ago.
I did ask.
Okay. So, as has happened many a time to many an institution over the last 15, 20 years, the Linguistic Society of America ballsed up I can't actually specifically recall how they ballsed up right in this moment, but then they doubled down and it all went fucking pear-shaped. And then as a way to redress that fuck up, and again, it is a fuck up. I'm not trying to minimize the fuck up, but what I'm trying to say is if you've followed the sorts of stories where a large institution has like goofed real bad and then tried to fix it by like appointing a committee of people to be like, oh, we're going to do better at the thing that we fucked up. This is broadly speaking the contour of this story as well. And I believe, Kelly, that's sort of where you came in the sense that you were part of that panel that they convened to try and fix the fucked up processes that had led to the fuck up in the first place.
Yes, one of several committees and panels.
A constellation of fuck-uppery.
And so I think at least for the social media committee, as far as it's concerned, I personally was like the canary in the coal mine for that committee during the, I guess it was 2021 annual meeting that was entirely online, because the 2020 meeting was in person in New Orleans, right? So this was the one after that. It was a colossal failure, right? It was a colossal failure of accessibility, all of these things. And yeah, it's just we had a very specific charge, the social media committee, right? Of how the ways in which we were allowed to respond to feedback from the internet or email or wherever, from social media. And there was this unfolding crisis happening, and people were saying things, and we just like weren't getting any response from the people who were supposed to be like taking our flagging of important things very seriously. And so because they were the issues were so egregious, I felt like I had to step away, because I didn't want my name associated with their efforts, to them be holding me up and saying, this person is making sure we're doing good things. And I was like, I am not, because they aren't listening to me in any way. And so
I am present. Good things are not happening.
Yeah. And I was giving a lot of time I was giving, a lot of time to monitoring things as they were coming, and no one was, listening to those efforts. So it was like, I certainly am connected and have these expertise and like a positionality to be able to tell you when things are an issue. And it was my market year, and I was finishing my dissertation. So I needed every ounce of energy I could get, and they weren't going to get any more of mine. But I will say that, President John Baugh is currently president, or will be through January, and has had one hell of a year in attempting to just do as much. And it's actually quite sad for me, because he's a scholar who's really inspired me and my work and a lot of other people for generations. And for him to have had this year be his year of presidency is actually quite depressing for a lot of us, because he certainly had initiatives that he was never able to enact, because he was just trying to undo this Gordian knot anyway.
Wow.
Yeah.
God, it sounds so rough.
It is.
And I think it was a very smart move for you personally to choose to not give that energy at a time. Like, you have to be able to finish your dissertation. Like,
and
that
just
is
like
very
stand
important.
up. Just
yeah.
And,
but even putting, not that I'm saying you should put your own stuff aside, but if we were to temporarily shelve the personal aspect of it, just being pulled in to do a thing and then no one allowing you to do the thing.
I was like, I can't do what you asked.
Like, yeah.
It was hard. And then now, the committee doesn't exist anymore. So since I left, it seems like all of the other members made a very similar decision that it was not being well managed. And so it couldn't continue to form as a body.
What were the kind of issues that were coming to the social media committee?
Well, it's essentially anything and everything that people would tweet with a tag. If we were tagged or tweeted at directly, it came straight to us, And then anything that the LSA, not everything that the LSA was emailed directly, but certain things would be filtered in our direction. So it was, and then there were also things from Instagram and LinkedIn, but it was mostly Twitter.
And then what were you expected to do with that?
Well, so we also had like other things about like publicizing stuff, because years ago, for 4 years, right, there were non-linguists in charge of the media, the forward-facing media of the LSA. So they wanted linguists to help comment on, here's the stories we share that are actually valid, that have like real science in them. So that was a lot of what we were doing, is being like, here are stories from the real news that are good and real, and here's like how we should frame them. So we were like working with the interns who were actually controlling the forward facing social media presence of the LSA. Then we were like also, which like, again, full-time job that
we swear. It's fine.
Great. Full-time job. People get whole degrees in this.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but they had like 9 of us with our own full-time jobs, you know, trying to be like, this is something you could tweet. Here's how it should look, you know, in the middle of our work weeks. But then there was like also this other thing of somebody just tweeted at the LSA and they're super mad. This needs a response today. Here's how you should say something. And when I never did it get a response today.
Because can I ask? And
we weren't allowed to tweet back, you know?
Yeah. So that was going to be my sort of follow-up question of, obviously, you're not allowed to respond as the committee. And when I say obviously, as in this is an institution that doesn't want to give that power away. But
an institution, one person, whatever.
Yeah. Well, that was going to be my next question. Did you get the sense that the reason these things weren't being actioned, these high order sort of like, hey, this is a thing that you need to really action like ASAP? Did you get the impression that they weren't being actioned because the people or person in the position of authority were like, oh, that's just that stupid online thing that doesn't matter? Like, that's not actually that important?
It wasn't necessarily about them discounting like the importance of the online space. I think that there was a bottleneck. I don't want to say that the very small staff of the LSA does not have a massive job. There are probably only 4 or 5 people who have real salaries there. It's an international organization with thousands of members, right? And a very limited budget, right? So these people have full day jobs. That said, that bottleneck was created in our mandate. So this these people said like, everything will go through us. And our committee was created with this charge of, we are not responding quickly enough to these issues. And that's why everybody hates us. That's why people are leaving in droves.
Is that?
That's why you cannot get people to buy memberships, pay registration fees, get the freaking journal. Do you know what I mean? Like, which is like, that is what they care about social media for. Raising money, getting clicks. And it's not the worst thing, because if they don't do that, then they cannot fulfill their mission of supporting us as a research organization, which we desperately need, especially when free speech is under attack. Okay. So like it does matter. It like really matters that we get that money. It matters that that's what they value, right? They have to get it somewhere. and when they get it from these veins that are like our passive engagement, we don't actively have to pay them. That's really helpful for the organization. But they don't think about it also in this way where people can tell you, like, give you feedback on how you are existing as an organization. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, well, are all these people members? And I'm like, who cares?
Yeah. Not the important question.
Can I ask something here as, like, so I'm not American and I'm European. And in Europe, we have something called SLE, which is Societas Linguistica Europea, which is a Latin name for the Linguistic Society of Europe. And in Australia, there's the ALS, Australian Linguistic Society. And they have quite, I would call, minimal approaches compared to the LSA. Like, they organize a conference. They organize the proceedings of the conference. Yeah.
And
There's like, I think there's a mailing list you can sign up to like know what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm on the ALS one. So like I get like, the ALS, there's a call for workshop coming out, and you like, and in my academic world, the SLE and the ALS are a bit similar to like other conferences that are regularly organized, like the Historical Linguistics Conference or the Linguistic Typology Conference or New Ways of Analyzing Variation Conference. Like they're all to me like conferences, and they are analyzed, and these two have a focus on a region like Australia and Europe. But other than that, they don't play like a big part in my academic life as a European academic. Whereas the LSA is a bit of a different beast.
Indeed.
First of all, like you said, there are international members. So it is the Linguistic Society of America, but I know people in Europe and Australia that are members and care about it and follow it. It hosts one of the most prestigious journals in linguistics, the journal Language, which like is a really big deal. It's a really big deal, and which also presumes to cover topics that don't have anything to do with linguistics in Americas per se.
Like
if someone wrote
a lot of the time, not.
Yeah, so if someone wrote an article to Language that had nothing to do with Indigenous languages of America or American English or anything like that,
It's because it's language. Sorry, I was the editor of Language, or the editor's assistant of Language for 3 years. So yeah, it's
right. So it's a very different. It's almost, as a European, it's a little bit annoying because it's like, hey, you guys are the Linguistic Society of America, and you claim to publish the Journal of Linguistics.
The record of linguistics.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing Hedvig articulate is that we need to create another body, another guild, a global linguistic thing.
Well, I mean, yeah,
no, I'm kidding.
That's like,
that's not the
we run the North American Research Network in historical sociolinguistics very much in the same way of, we have an annual meeting, we put our proceedings online, and we don't charge anybody fees, and it works pretty well for our international audience. But
yeah.
I wanted to ask you, just on a slightly more encouraging note, about your work on meta-language.
Oh,
and
yes,
how
thank you. Get us away from this topic.
This is from your, it's just rough. And that's the struggle pile. So now we're climbing off the struggle pile for a second.
This is part of the struggle pile, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So meta-language, we talked about this before, you and I understand from my work in education that meta-language is your knowledge about language. I know what nouns and verbs are, and that's my meta-language understanding. But you did research on how people understood their knowledge of language, or how people viewed their own knowledge of language. Mm-hmm. What was going on there?
Well, a lot. So my dissertation is on perceptions of Black professionalism. And those perceptions come from the community of Black professionals, as well as the wider public itself. So I define metalinguistic awareness as something that encompasses what a language user knows about the relation of social factors like age, gender, and race to linguistic usage, distribution, meaning, or context of occurrence variance, which is essentially everything, right? It's like, it's usage. Yeah. It's like what you know about domains of usage in relation to your usage. And so this dissertation tracks the ways in which 17 Black professionals from Detroit use their language in general through their careers, but also in their lives, the ways in which they came to know the different styles they possess, how they categorize them for themselves, the words that they use to describe them, how they view them, like what is present in one that isn't in the other, and the domains of usage they occur in, and then similar experiences between them. So, how, like, do you experience tone policing? When do you feel like you use a whiter voice to stay safe? Things like this, these very similar questions. So I developed a new method of sociolinguistic interview to do these, to elicit these metalinguistic observations. And then there's an experiment that pulls variables from these observations. So in the sociolinguistic interview, I'm not analyzing speech production, which is a major deviation from the goals of previous interview. I am very interested in what these people say, not how they say it, not how their language is organized. I am not listening to you. I am listening to you, right? And so I am very interested in what people have to say in these patterns of observation of usage, of their usage. So the variables that I'm testing in the experiment are things that people told me that they avoid, of these patterns of self-censorship in professional spaces, of parts of their language that they hold back when they feel like they have to be accepted in their jobs. And so we tested these variables to see how people feel about them. That study is not special in its methodology, but it is special in the fact that it uses only Black speech. So it is using a standard variety and a non-standard variety of African American language, as opposed to African American language versus white language in the study. So white language is not defaulted here. And what we find is that almost every listener, no matter what their demographics, out of 300 people, almost every listener prefers the more standard productions of in all environments. And so that, kind of contrasts some of what people reported about their own productions and how they feel about usage in themselves and their own communities and the communities of others.
So when you say prefers,
yeah,
what did they how
is preference measured?
Yeah, or how do people frame that? Like, do they say, I understand this better, or I like this better, or?
So it's a very pared down phonetic experiment. So they got two sentences, essentially sentence A or sentence B, which one sounds more professional. And the only difference in those two sentences that they only heard them, they did not see them, was one phonetic variable that had been manipulated. So they got consonant cluster reduction in one sentence and not the other. So they might have heard something like fine instead of find. And because of that, it was actually trend. Sorry. They heard trend instead of trend. And almost everyone preferred the sentence with trend. Right. And that's the only difference. So in one sentence, you're hearing a little more of an ending than the other.
Right. And they were specifically asked, which one do you think is more professional? Yes.
And that is like a model from other literatures. So I was, just not replicating, but echoing other work.
That makes sense.
Wow, Kelly, you just do so much in linguistics and for the linguistic community. And I get the sense that there's some joy, there's some pain. What keeps you going?
Well, a part of this is two things. Part of getting through the work itself, like the dissertation, the 300 pages, which please read them. I know, hilarious. Is
we'll have a link.
Is pulling those stories forward. So these 17 people who sat down with me in the early days of the pandemic and talked to me about their lives and everything that they have carried, which so much of that mirrors my own experience, even in this light-skinned body, was just, I feel a profound responsibility to report that work, to create space for their words and their experiences to just live in the literature. And so just having the opportunity to tell those stories is incredibly profound for me. And then being able to show hey, did you know there's variation in Black language? It's such a thing that it upsets me that we have to continue saying it. It's something that I felt like I could get away with not saying for a while, I felt like it was understood. But then when you go looking back in the literature, this isn't understood, because people are saying like, oh my gosh, did you realize that like Black people also have regional variation and they don't do it in the same way as others? And you're like, huh. Like I just, and so actually like taking the space to make that point of being like, let me show you very definitively, like these people that are all from this place that share all of these identity categories, really orienting to these types of usage in different ways. And like, here's why. And that like points me into another thing that really sustains me, is that I am the biggest nerd for this stuff. Like I really love it. Right. And so underneath like all of the stuff that feels bad on the outside, I have all of these questions about how language actually works and what is happening. And so, understanding how ideology is maintained over time and through time at this interactional moment of perception, where concepts like discursive irreducibility come in, where it's like, I am trying to mean something and I have all of these goals as a person, but I walk into a room and maybe that meaning just like doesn't happen, or I'm using these symbols, but they don't mean like everything that I want them to mean because I can't fully do self all the time. Like all of this stuff is so interesting to me, of like the how and why it works, and how identities are even maintained under such pressures, and then how we like claw, ourselves like out of all of that muck when we like come into the world, like the absolutely massive potential of linguistic agency. Like when you think of it in this idea of like the energy contained in an atom, like an individual person has such potential for like creativity and linguistic production and all of these things. And then we've seen like single human beings' language really alter the course of history. And so it's this idea of like, if you go out into the world and do self, that's actually like such a radical move and like all of this stuff. And so like this is like what really like reinforces the wheel for me of being like, oh gosh, it's hard to live. What a risk. And then it's like, but if we, if we keep like pushing forward the way we want, it actually really improves the species. And like, let's keep doing that. And then I just like walk into the world with like my like film the police t-shirt on, or like stuff like this. And like, let me like live out loud as hard as I can right now. So yeah.
I was flipping through the PDF of your dissertation. You have the coolest dedication that I've ever seen. It says dedication to self-determination.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat. Usually people put something else there. I really like that.
Thanks.
That's really cool. This is a bit of a more positive note, maybe.
Dr. Kelly Wright, thank you so much for telling us about your work.
Thanks.
What motivates you, what fuels you, and how you're trying to make the world a better place with language. Thanks for all you do.
Thanks for having me. It was so great to be here. So nice to meet you, Hedvig.
Yeah, same. But you're going to stick around because next up is Word of the Week.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have a word from Kelly, if you'd be so kind. Have you got a word for us?
I do. As I said, I've been working on this a special edition of Among the New Words for Gender and Sexuality. And so a lot of new to me terms have come my way in the last several days and weeks. And one of them was gender anarchy.
Oh, wow.
Like relationship anarchy.
Yeah, which is like not a particularly new word. Again, like we're being expansive. It actually comes, out of like the 1890s, maybe like European anarchist movements. But it is this idea of like social revolution through means of queer liberation and like the abolition of binaries and like various forms of misogyny. So I really like gender anarchy as my word of the.
Wow.
Can I ask, is it sort of conveying a sense of like other anarchist movements, but just sort of pertaining to gender expression, where it's just like, it's this, it's that, it's everything in between, it's nothing, it's fucking some of your business, it's none of your business, it's all of these things at once and none of these things, and it's just a lot, and it's great.
Yeah, and it's very like bringing down any wall is a step towards bringing down every wall, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I like it. That's fun.
That's great. This one came from Kate S. on our Discord. The word is starbucked. Starbucked, any guesses?
I have to assume it's to do with coffee rather than fighter pilots from Battlestar Galactica.
Unfortunately.
Okay, you're in the right zone.
It's got to be something like Zuckerberg or like Zucked, right?
Is this
Getting
something
zucked.
about labor unions?
This time it's not. It's about
Okay, is it about pretend white names?
No, it's
Okay.
not. Here's the message from Kate S. I'm listening to the Doomsday podcast. I hadn't heard about that one. And the host just said a particular river was starbucked with flour mills.
Gross.
Oh, okay.
I'd never heard
get
that
it.
before,
That means they're
but
like all
understood it
over. They're on
immediately.
like both sides of the
Yeah,
river.
yeah,
Is
That's
that
right.
it?
Yeah.
They're all over the place. I'd never heard that before, but understood it immediately, and now I want to shoehorn it into conversation at least once today. No?
Oh.
That is
Don't
not the
look-
same as Zucked, you guys.
Wait, that took a long time for me.
Oh, okay.
The inevitable Hedvig penny drop has
The
occurred.
place was starbucked with dirty socks. No. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So it comes from the metaphor that in the United States, on a lot of intersections, there'll be a Starbucks and a Starbucks across from the Starbucks, and they'll just be everywhere. That's what it's
Yes.
referring to.
Yes,
But
Right.
not in Western Australia.
not in Australia. Not in Australia. Full stop.
We only have one Starbucks in Leipzig, and
Cool.
yeah.
Yep. Okay, let's go on. Quad ball. This is a new name of a certain sport, but what's the sport?
AFL.
Ball. No. Oh, maybe because they have such massive quads.
Is it AFL? Australian Footy League, whatever.
No, nobody is proposing renaming AFL to quad ball.
Oh, so this is not like a funny, like this is what like thirsty women are calling the AFL now. It's like people are genuinely proposing this name for a sport.
An entire sport is abandoning its old name and referring to quad ball instead.
Ooh, is it bocce ball?
Nope.
Is it? Wait. What a quad is like?
For
I do not fully understand the etymology because I'm not immersed in this zone, but I believe it refers to four.
Is it pickleball?
No.
Is it? I was going to guess pickleball as well, Kelly, because I know it's like the fastest growing sport in America at the moment.
Also begins with Q. The old name also begins with Q.
Oh, okay. No, so not that one.
Well, it can't be Quidditch.
Oh my god, it could be Quidditch.
Croquet.
You don't know.
croquet?
That's not
It is.
Quidditch.
Is it Quidditch? Because of
It's
everyone
fucking
hating on
Quidditch.
JK.
It is Quidditch.
Because
Yep.
of JK?
That is correct.
Really?
The story by Theo Ferrant on Euronews.com. Quidditch changed this name to quad ball after, I love the after, J.K. Rowling's alleged anti-trans comments.
Alleged.
Yeah, so
Friggin'.
alleged.
This is accretion.
Yeah,
That's what that is.
too.
So there are two reasons. Number one, the name Quidditch is trademarked by Warner, so they can't really get like sponsorship opportunities. But the second one they have cited is Rowling's anti-trans positions as a reason for the change. So the International Quidditch Association will probably become the International Quad Ball Association. Apparently people like the sport. There you
Yeah.
go.
I find that very hard to believe.
They've been playing it since the beginning.
Yeah,
I know.
I've seen videos of people playing. So
I
if,
know.
yeah, if anyone hasn't watched, it's really fun. So they have to run around with a broom between their legs, which one is an improvement on any sport. If we can make people run with things between their legs in any other sport, that would make me happier. I will start watching football.
I wish water polo was like that.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, like, is Hedvig, are you aware that horse-based sports exist? Because if not, your world is about to just get thoroughly rocked.
But
There's a whole...
horse-based sports are only available to rich people. A broom
fair enough.
or a stick is available to most people.
I've
I
got
would
an idea.
argue.
Why don't we add brooms to other sports and we can stick a Q on front of them? You could have like Quennis. Gotta have a racket.
Cricket?
You could have
Quit ball.
Quicket.
Quicket.
You could have Quinature golf.
I know Daniel's
would love
really
it.
trying to keep us on cue here, but I have
Yeah, no.
I have a number of sports that I think could do with various kinds of improvements. Do you want to
Please.
hear? Okay, so for football, like European soccer football, I think one or all of these things: bigger goals, fewer
Okay.
people, more balls.
Fewer people.
Oh, more balls.
Oh,
More balls.
yes. Okay.
What fewer like surely the person to pitch ratio for soccer is already super low.
I love it.
I love the more balls idea. That's hilarious.
More
There
goals
needs to be
all
more
around the
things
field.
happening.
Side goals.
Oh, I see.
Side goals.
Okay.
Here we go.
More
Kelly's
goals.
we're on the same page. Yes. Whenever I mention this to my very British husband, he just tells me I'm too American. But
I feel like, Headers, you've gone the wrong way with the number of players. Surely more, like AFL style, right? Make every interaction this like weird mishmash struggle cuddle type
Smaller,
situation.
more intense.
No, I've got it. You have two games playing on the same pitch at the same time.
Oh, that's fun.
Like they do for little kids.
that's
Anybody
not bad.
gets a ball into any goal, it scores for that team.
Yeah.
Like,
When they go
I
back.
mean,
Okay.
it doesn't have to be like, so whenever I mention this to my very British husband, he's like, oh, you just want there to be like 10 goals a minute. And I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be 10 goals a minute. It just doesn't have to be like one goal in 90 minutes. Like,
Yeah. There's middle ground here.
there's something in between those. And like, there can't be like 0 goals. And then I have to watch this weird thing where you just like line up and shoot balls against. That's not football. Penalties is not football.
Here's the
Anyway.
thing. There are some great soccer games where it's 0-1 and some really horrible soccer games where it's 0-1.
Yeah, I believe it.
last one, burp tax. This one came up last week. Burp tax, as in
tax.
belch. Burp tax.
Oh, yeah. Livestock.
Yes, correct. This is an article from Al Jazeera. New Zealand proposes cow, sheep, burp tax
For methane.
to curb emissions. So it's, yes, that's right. Livestock are responsible for approximately 15% of global greenhouse gases, and cows are the number one culprits. So, New Zealand, they proposed taxing the greenhouse gases that farm animals emit from their burps and from their wheeze, because lots of nitrous oxide comes from cow urine.
Oh.
And it's not a popular idea, but it could be a curb on the methane and the nitrous oxide that gets emitted, because it's a lot.
And before someone says, like, poor cow farmers in New Zealand, first of all, they're probably already fucked over by the agricultural system in general. But also, you could produce something else than beef.
We just need to pay the real cost of meat.
Yeah, that's my take on all of these sorts of things, is like a carbon real price for things isn't a bad. It just, if it means meat is like a lot more expensive, okay, maybe the world can eat a bit less meat. I'm thinking.
I remember a couple of years ago in Australia, there was this big hubbub because there was going to be like a tax cut on pea farming. And a bunch of like cattle farmers were like upset because they're like, oh, why do the pea farmers get more money than us? And it's like, because their farms
Farming
aren't
peas.
they're farming peas and they're better. And you're
They're
farming,
farming peas, and the pea protein is going to go, a lot of it, into fake meat, which is what like some of the veggie burgers are made of.
I also wonder if that was somehow to do with like nitrogen fixing into the soil or something like that.
maybe. But also, like, there are pea farmers in Australia. It's not like it's like they also exist. like,
And like not an insubstantial number of them, right? It's certainly if you extend it out to all like pulses and legumes.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so burp tax from Aotearoa.
And so, gender anarchy, starbucked, quadball, and burp tax are words of the week. Quick one from Keith. Hello, Daniel, Hedvig, and Ben. A new phrase popping up from some cable news and talk show hosts at the end of the interview where the host usually says, "Thank you for coming," or some such. I'm beginning to hear, "I appreciate you," instead. Not widely spread, but the hosts who use it do so fairly consistently. I've heard it so far only from African-American hosts, so I'm guessing that it's more commonly used in African-American English, but perhaps it's a regional thing instead. I'll be watching to see if it spreads over the next few months or years. As always, thanks to you and your team for your fine work. Because Language is a terrific show, and new episodes always get put at the very top of my increasingly long listen to this list from Keith.
Aw, thanks, Keith.
Thanks, Keith. Any intuitions here?
I recently heard something, I saw something on Black Twitter that said that a woman said she saw a white news anchor saying, "I appreciate you," and was like, I guess I'm not going to be appreciating people no more. now that white people are using it, they're like, well, this is dead. We need something else. So appreciate has been, part of the lexicon, African American lexicon for long time. But I will say it's perhaps regionalized. I mean, most usages are, so.
That's interesting that was salient enough that language user identified it as, that's a black bag.
So I would imagine that it maybe got propelled into the whitosphere by Ted Lasso.
Oh.
Because that's his catchphrase. I don't know, like, if you're not watching Ted Lasso, one of his like go-to lines throughout the show is like, "I appreciate you." That's how he often like finishes a conversation with someone or something like that. Because that whole show is like therapy boy good times. So I think that's where perhaps the white masses might have sort of had this come more fully into their. Because, you know, as with all things, when a white face says it, it's like way better. I really worry that no one could see my like facial expression just then. Like I need everyone to understand that I am making fun of the whites right now.
After we finish recording this show, Daniel will often say, off air, I think, "I really appreciate you, and I appreciate you coming, and like I like doing this show." That? Yeah, you say that a lot.
Oh, I said that to you. I really appreciate you being on this. Yeah, I say that to you a lot.
But you don't say like appreciate you. You say like I appreciate you coming. I appreciate you making time. And I always thought it was part of the same kind of language as like your feelings are valid. I understand you feel upset. Like this kind of like gentle
therapy,
parenting.
good time boy.
Therapy, good time boy.
Yeah.
No, it's all real. I'm really, really grateful to you guys doing this because it's fun.
No, but like
just to be clear, gentle parenting can be real.
And that's the thing is like it's such a normal phrase. It's I think that we can't always say that some of those usages come from a particular, right? It's like this convergent evolution thing or something like that almost.
Everything's happening at once.
But maybe saying it at the end of conversations and just saying "I appreciate you" maybe is more common in Black communities. Or has been.
Or rural communities in general, or working class communities in general, because you get, I don't know, I grew up in the American South, so these things, for me personally, are very overlapped.
Right.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you for that insight. And big thank yous to our guest for this episode, Dr. Kelly Wright. Kelly, thanks for coming on. How can people find out what you're doing?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I am on Twitter at Ratiolinguistic. With just a C at the end. And then I'm sure you all can link to my website. I am at Virginia Tech. It's just Kelly Wright at vt.edu if you want to get me.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Thanks to everybody who gave us ideas for the show. Thanks to Dustin of Sandman Stories. Good podcast. He recommends us to just about everyone in the Twitter sphere.
Oh, hi, Dustin.
Hi, Dustin. Dustin loves you. He loves us too. We like him a lot. The team at Speech Docs, who transcribes everything that we say, they're kind of our buddies as well.
Yeah. Sorry again, everyone. just sorry to all of Speech Docs on behalf of me and my voice.
Thanks to our sponsors, the Oxford English Dictionary, and most of all, thanks to our patrons who give us so much support, make it possible to keep the show going. Y'all are great.
And if you liked what you just heard, you can do a number of things to support this show. And I know all podcasters say this at the end of their show, and some of them are easy to do, some of them are harder to do, but usually there's at least one easy thing. And one of the easy things you can do is follow us on all the social medias. We are Because Lang Pod everywhere except Spotify. We are still on Twitter. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll all see what happens next. We are also on Mastodon. We have been for ages. We don't use it very much, but we are actually also on there.
That might be changing soon.
Yeah,
I'm looking at it.
Also, I've seen people being like, hey, MySpace was not too bad. So if we don't have a MySpace, maybe we should get a MySpace again.
We're not getting a MySpace.
You can also leave us a message by going to our website, becauselanguage.com, and leave a message with SpeakPipe. That'd be great. Then we can hear your sweet voices and we can play them in the show. You can also send us an old-fashioned email at hello@becauselanguage.com. You can tell a friend about us, and you can leave a review. I regularly check on the reviews on Podchaser because it's a non-Apple, non-Google, maybe sponsored by one of them, I don't know, place, and I see some people, but I don't see one since I mentioned a review last.
Come on, folks.
If you review is there, I'll probably read you out.
Yeah.
And of course, you can always become a patron. You'll get the cool bonus episodes when they first come out before we release them to the general public. You can hang out with us on Discord, which just low-key is actually probably the greatest benefit of becoming a patron, because it's a really wonderful community of delightful nerds and lots of cat photos. You'll be making it possible for us to transcribe all of our shows, and I will continue to make some poor speech docs person's life not great, and so you could pay for that. And I would like just to shout out to some of our patrons right now, and they are Iston, Termy, Elias, Matt, Whitney, Helen, Udo, Jack, Farrowcat, Lord Mortis, Grammar Yen, Larry, Christopher, Andy B, James S, Nigel, Meredith, Kate, Nazrin, Aisha, Moe, Steele, Manu, Roger, Rianne, Colleen, Ignacio, Sonic Snedgehog, still my favourite, Kevin, Jeff, Andy from Logophilius, Stan, Kathy, Rush, Cheyenne, Felicity S, Amir, Canny Archer, Tim, Alyssa, Chris W, and Felicity G, and Kate B, who, we say this every week, but she really did just obliterate. We're talking orbital bombardment of the one-time donation button at becauselanguage.com. Last week, Daniel said she hit it so hard that it went away, but that was a fucking lie. It's still there, and you can definitely still give us money.
It's still there?
It's still there. You can give us money that way. And to our newest patrons at the friend level, Janaka and Justine, and then Brian K bumped his pledge, more than doubling it from its former total. Thanks, Brian. You're a real cool guy. And thanks to all of our amazing patrons.
Forgot to say James S. also bumped his pledge, so we're getting some bumpers.
I thought you were saying I forgot to say James S. And I was like, I fucking didn't. I said it. I said it real good.
You did. Our theme music has been written and performed by Drew Kriplianov, a member of Ryan Bino and Didion's Bible. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time. Because language.
Pew, 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 pew,
Yay! Hey everybody, just a quick note. We're running our Word of the Week of the Year competition. Happens every year. We take all the words of the week that we have over the year. We let people vote on them on Twitter and on Facebook. Your likes are votes. Head on over to our accounts. We are Because Lang Pod, and you can vote, and your favorite word might be the winner. We'll have those results for a live patron episode in December.